So when I started this channel, I jumped straight into creating vlogs, tutorial, etc. without giving much of an introduction. So now I want to take advantage of this forced time here at home during the lockdown to let you know a bit better who I am. And starting with the big question, why Fuji and how did I become a Fujifilm photographer? The truth is that it almost happened by accident, but let's start from the beginning. I started shooting digital just over 20 years ago after some experience with film, and photographers back then were still debating whether digital was even a viable option. And my first camera was indeed a Fujifilm with 1.5 megapixel, no screen, an internal memory that could save only a handful of photos. Mostly an expensive toy, but what can I say? I'm an early adopter and I love to try all the new tech. Anyway, I was working as an art director back then and I wanted to complement my work with some photography, but I was fed up with using stock photography that made every project look the same. And I also wanted to offer my clients something more personal. And so, without much information, because internet was not like you all know it today, I asked some friends and then decided to go with Nikon for my professional work. I've had a few Nikon cameras, and the last one I think it was the D200, and I absolutely loved them. They were perfect for my needs and a pleasure to use, and I shot commercial work with them, portraits, weddings, e-commerce, travel, and they made me love photography so much that I even converted a spare room in my house into a small studio. And together with Nikon, I had a brief experience shooting with Hasselblad as well. While working with a company called Centrica in Italy, we were using Hasselblad the H5D550 medium format camera with an Imecon digital back. And with Centrica, I had the pleasure to photograph some of the most amazing masterpieces hosted in famous public and private galleries in Florence. And chances are that if you use an app of a Florentine museum, you could be seeing one of the images I created. But this heavy Hasselblad and my Nikon gear started feeling a bit of a hindrance. I was carrying around all this heavy equipment, and even on holiday, my bags were filled with gear, and I was beginning to feel the weight of this gear, not just physically, but also mentally. It had become so exhausting that the fun side of photography quickly dried out, and I decided to quit. But then that was when the iPhone 4 was released, and for the first time a decent quality camera was mounted on such small device. It was a radical change from the reality of heavy and cumbersome DSLRs, and of course I was intrigued. Like I said, early adopter. So I thought, yeah, let's do this. It was the right time to try this approach as well, because Instagram had just launched, and around the world, people started believing that the best camera is the one that's always with you. It was sort of a sparkle of a revolution, one that you can all see the outcome of today. And of course, the quality of the iPhone was never on par with the DSLR, but I felt like it brought back the fun. The iPhone traveled with me to many countries. I never felt I needed anything else. And my photography was also more like a hobby then, and only at times really complemented my work. And the iPhone was perfectly capable to deliver. Until I went to Iceland. Now, I visited Iceland with my mate Fabrizio in 2014, and I had the newly released iPhone 6 Plus back then in my pocket. And frankly, I brought back amazing photos shot with the iPhone. Good enough to be featured in a book as well. And looking at those pictures actually on the book, and I'm very much surprised at how much has changed in such little time, because when I was there, everything was empty, no tourists in sight. All the famous Skogafoss, Seljalandsfoss, Vatnajökull, Kirkjufell, all the places you know, empty. Which I don't think ever happened again, at least until the pandemic. But anyway, my friend had the Fujifilm X-T1, and this is how I got to learn about mirrorless cameras and Fujifilm. And during our time, we were comparing our results all the time, and the colors of the iPhone were always a big surprise to both of us. This small device was perfectly capable to match a professional camera in daylight. And I knew a smartphone would always struggle with low light, okay? I know that. And it's only improved very recently, really. And I was fine with it. But I'm sure you're all well aware of this one peculiar event happening in the sky at night in Iceland. It's not that the iPhone wasn't capable of taking pictures of the northern lights. It couldn't even see them. Any attempt resulted in a mushy and noisy dark void. But with the Fujifilm X-T1 and the 35mm f1.4, we could simply point at the sky and check any northern light activity on the screen, even on a cloudy day. Now, in my time away from professional cameras, a lot had changed, and when I left, I had almost never heard of mirrorless cameras, if not for a few experiments. And in Iceland, I had the time to play with probably the very first groundbreaking one. As far as I know, the Fujifilm X-T1 was the camera that paved the way for every other camera company. So I got myself a Fuji, and boy, I loved it. All the issues I had with the DSLRs were gone. All the bulk, the weight. This was a camera the size of my palm, and I have small hands, with all the fantastic ergonomics of my old Nikon, and producing even better colors. And I was back into photography big time. And so now I've been a Fujifilm photographer for several years, and Fujifilm helped me become the photographer I am today, being featured in Photographer of the Year exhibitions. Their cameras always produce amazing color, and the experience of shooting with a Fuji camera is simply a joy. I put the camera back on the shelf at night, and the morning after, it's there, looking at me, teasing me, take me out, let's have fun. And something very important to me, a Fuji camera is never in the way of my photography. The way it is designed, I lift my arm, move my fingers on the dials, and I can take my shot. I don't have to fiddle with convoluted menus. I don't have to feel the burden of a heavy equipment. My camera is there, attached to my wrist, always ready. And I'm aware that the competitors may have better features, although none produce better colors straight out of camera in my opinion. But it's the user experience that is second to none. I shoot with different Fuji cameras now, including the GFX large format system, and it's always the same great pleasure and always the same gorgeous results. And this is why I'm with Fujifilm. So thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope you enjoyed it, and it gave a few insights of what was the history of digital photography as well, because I've been there for over 20 years now. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to like and possibly subscribe to the channel as well, because this would really help my small channel. Thank you.